All right. Well, welcome back to the Breaking Ice podcast. My name is Josh Ferguson, and this is, I believe, our fourth episode of the Municipal election series here in Norman Wells. And today I have the chance to sit down with Bob Greek, one of our candidates for councillor. So welcome.
Thank you very much, Josh. Pleasure to be here.
Well, how's your day going, Bob?
It's going great.
Yeah, where'd you wake up this morning?
I woke up this morning in Edmonton, and it was a whole lot nicer than it is here in the Wells.
All right. Well, let's start with your personal background. Where are you from?
So I was originally from Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
I was born and raised there. It was funny because we came here almost 17 years ago. It'll be 17 years in January. We'd always wanted to come north.
Yeah.
And then my wife got pregnant with a high-risk pregnancy. We'd actually applied with at the time, Hudson's Bay Company, but Northern Stores. And when the opportunity arose, my youngest son started university.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought, you know what? We're going to pursue that dream of going north.
Okay.
And we started looking. My wife was the one who started looking online, and she found a job that looked like it was almost tailor-made for me, running the Matco up here. Okay. I have a background in transportation and in the moving business.
Okay.
So I applied, and it was a whirlwind. At first, I didn't get the job because it was for the operations manager's job, and they filled it internally. And then the next thing I know, I get this phone call. Bob, are you still interested in Norman Wells? I said, oh, yeah, absolutely. He said, well, we need a branch manager. I'm like, okay. And next thing I knew, I was on a plane to Norman Wells in December.
Ooh, nice.
So, yeah, you're getting the real taste.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
3 hours a daylight.
Well, at least after you can survive that, then the rest of the year is fine.
Oh, exactly. So, yeah. So, I mean, the rest they say is history. We came up here. It has been wonderful. We've had all three of our kids have come up, but my oldest boy, I have a daughter and two sons, and my oldest boy actually came up for 6 months and ended up staying 11 years.
Oh, wow.
Marrying a girl up here, having two kids up here. In fact, my granddaughter was the last child born in the Monica Loomis Health Center. She was impatient. She didn't want to wait to go to Yellowknife.
Oh. So
she was born here at the Monica Loomis Health Center, the first child in 31 years. So, yeah, it was, I have a little
claim to fame.
Exactly. We have a little history in this town. So
that's cool. When you decided to move up here 17 years ago, was it evident from that moment that this was going to be a long-term home, or at what point did you decide that, no, this is the place for me?
Oh, we came up with a 5-year plan, and I don't know how many people I've talked to who came up with a 5-year plan. And, you're talking to me 17 years later. So
yeah, that's like a Duclos kind of thing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we came up with a 5-year plan. We weren't going to buy a house. We actually kept our house in Nova Scotia.
Uh-huh.
And then we got settled in. Opportunity came up to buy a house, which I'm kind of regretting now, but yeah. And we decided this is it. This is where we're going to stay until we retire.
Yeah. Wicked. That's awesome. Tell me about your upbringing. How has that shaped your political views and views on community involvement?
Well, I grew up with a very conservative businessman father.
Okay.
So both my grandfathers were fishermen.
Okay.
Out east? In Lunenburg, Nova Scotia.
Okay.
One was offshore scallop. The other was a inshore lobster fisherman.
Okay.
My father joined the Navy and became an electronics tech.
Okay.
And he wasn't cut out for the Navy. He was chronic seasick, poor guy. And so he took his trade, which at that time he was a electronics tech, or his specialty was radar. And he went to work for private companies. And in 1970, I got to get this right now, 73, he started a marine electronics company in Nova Scotia.
Okay.
And it's now the largest marine electronics company in Canada, with all over the East Coast, out west. And so I watched my father as a businessman, and that definitely shaped the way I see things. And I watched him and his political views, and we differ on some things. Naturally. But I definitely have My wife calls me a liberal conservative.
Mm.
So I'm on that edge.
Okay.
And she calls herself a conservative liberal. So we both believe in economic stability.
Yeah.
But we also believe we need the social programs as well. So
Yeah.
you have to be sort of we're in that moderate group.
Yeah, as are so many people, right? Like
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think the majority you
Yeah.
find are in that moderate group. There's always going to be the far left and the far right.
Yeah, and nowadays it just seems like those are the loudest groups.
Absolutely. They're not the majority. They're just the loud ones.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, awesome. Well, thanks for that context. That's great. So when did you first become interested in getting involved in local politics?
I never thought about coming into local politics until I came here. Honestly.
So what is it about Norman Wells that inspired you?
It really did. I mean, I came here in 2008, and in 2009, I was voted in as a councillor my first term. My first time. So
a year after you got here?
A year after I got
that's
here.
A quick.
Well, I got involved in the town.
Yeah.
And you know, I really enjoyed representing this town.
Yep.
And you know, I didn't know enough what's the saying? I didn't know enough to know I didn't know enough.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, I honestly was so green here. It's a little different this time. And when I was voted out in 2012, because I did run, I understood it. It was, like I said, it was a great learning experience for me.
Yeah.
I wasn't a homeowner at the time. I was still renting and all that. And now I have a completely different perspective of what's here. And right now, we need serious people in this town. We need serious leaders. There's so many things that are kind of going sideways. So that's why I decided to put my hat in the ring again. That, and I think Frank asked me 47,000 times. No, probably only 10, but you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Frank and I used to laugh because if Frank and I agreed on something when we sat on council together, it would be, wow, we actually agreed on something.
Oh, you guys had very differing views.
We were definitely opposed at times, but on the important issues, we were on the same page.
Sure. And if a council is functioning properly, you want people with conflicting views on to be kind of helping guide the ship.
Well, that's how you get success.
Yeah.
It's the differing views creating consensus for the best of everybody.
Yeah. Hopefully through that process, you end up pointing somewhere that's more true than otherwise.
Absolutely. And this is no different than, any political group.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have a certain amount of give and take. And if you're going to be a hard line, you're just not going to fit in.
Do you have a concept? I have 3 questions here, and they're all very similar, and you've kind of been answering all of them. So I just want to talk about this some more. But do you have a sense of how you'd like to maybe describe yourself as a counselor then, and then kind of how you aim to be this time around?
As a counselor then, I was somewhat uninformed, and not that I didn't read my packages or do my research, because to me, that's one of the things that bothers me the most, is people that get into council and then they pick up their council package the day of the meeting and haven't done any research. I always believe that when you come into council, you need to be prepared to ask the right questions. The difference is now I know what the right questions are. And that's why I think I'll be a bit different as a counselor now. Again, just experience. I mean, I've been in this town 17 years. I've seen the transitions. We've had so many, with Imperial going to predominantly rotational. It reduced our population drastically.
Yeah.
It took a lot of kids out of our schools.
And that happened around COVID? Or is that before?
No, that was before COVID.
Okay.
So I'm trying to get this right now. I believe it was 2018. There was a pipeline instability at Fort Simpson. So when that happened, we had to shut down. Imperial had to shut down. They couldn't produce any more oil because the pipeline was deemed as unsafe. So for a while, we produced into tanks while they got this field shut down. But we were shut down for nearly 2 years.
Whoa.
So yeah, for nearly 2 years, we waited while the pipeline at Fort Simpson got approval to do exactly the same thing as they want to do with Line 490, which is put in a safer pipeline instead of being across the bottom of the river, an underground pipeline.
Oh, and 490 was damaged or whatever happened to it because it was on the
It's
bottom
a surface,
of the river. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it's a surface line. So at that point, Imperial, basically, we were running a skeleton crew.
Mm.
Of course, that meant all the people moved away.
Yeah.
At the same time, Imperial decided they were putting the asset up for sale.
Well, that's fun. I'm sure that was a really calm time in town.
Exactly. So Imperial's putting the asset up for sale. We've got almost no staff here on site. So when they came back, they opted to go with rotational workers because they were trying to sell, and it's much easier instead of having to relocate everybody again.
Yeah.
So that was a major kick. I mean, we still have I think it's still over 30 some odd houses that are empty, Imperial houses.
Yeah.
That were all filled, and mostly with families.
And it's, even though through the 3 or 4 years that I've been here, I've seen a little bit of a return of SO families.
Absolutely.
But nothing compared to the original. So.
Well, we had no rotational workers, not with Imperial. We did have rotational contractors.
Sure.
But with Imperial, it was all live-in families.
Yeah.
And so that really affected the town. It took away, obviously funding from the schools because there was less kids. It made it harder for grocery stores. Like, everything got a little bit harder. And
less volunteers, etc.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A lot less on the volunteer side of things too, which was hard.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting context. I didn't realize that it had been shut down for 2 years.
Yeah.
Was there generators running at that point, or did you guys switch to diesel for the power corp?
It was a combination of both, but we were actually running on diesel because NTPC hadn't put in their new generators yet. See, I was here for the freeze up in 2010 when Imperial went down because the field went down because it was froze up. It was minus 44, 45. And NTPC tried to start their generators and they wouldn't run. We were at 4 hours is the evacuation point for Norman Wells.
Without power.
Without power. We were at 3 hours, 40 minutes.
Whoa.
And the only reason that we got back up and running is because Imperial Oil basically bent over backwards. They ran an exterior line to get gas to the turbine to start the turbine to provide power for the town. And
wow.
It was, I was at the time I was on council, and we had the EMO, the Emergency Measures Organization, set up. We had warming stations set up at the schools with generators. That's when the town discovered they made a big boo-boo and put all those electronic keys in and couldn't get in to get the doors open to to get the generators out. A lot of learnings came out of that.
I feel like humans are the masters of unintended consequence, eh?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was funny.
Awesome. Well, that's all so interesting. And there's actually a fair amount of parallels to what's going on right now.
Very much so.
Yeah.
At least now, if Imperial does have to shut down, the new generators that are here for NTPC are definitely capable of continuing.
Sure. Now, obviously, the problem is, quantity of fuel available for it.
Well, 6,000 liters a day.
Yeah.
That's what NTPC burns.
Yeah.
And right now, we don't have 6,000 liters. That's why it's so important that Imperial keeps going, at least for the winter.
Yeah, there's not a shutdown this winter, especially in the dead of winter.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. I honestly, as a resident, all that context makes me feel more comfortable for some reason, knowing those things.
Oh, yeah. We've been through it. So.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, let's talk about vision and policy here. What specific issues in Norman Wells are you the most passionate about?
Well, one of the big ones I'm passionate about, and it's not just because I work out on the leases, we need to try to keep Imperial running. Mm-hmm. They have a firm date of 2030. And needless to say, we were already starting to prep for that date, 2030 shutdown. Mm-hmm. this potentially 2026, nobody's ready for that.
Yeah.
So really,
Not even Imperial.
No, not even Imperial.
Yeah.
So that is probably one of the most pertinent issues that's affecting this town right now. The majority of our tax base is coming from Imperial Oil.
Yeah.
Without it, we go village and then potentially hamlet status. Because what a lot of people don't know is the reason we are a town is tax base. It has nothing to do with population. It is purely based on tax base.
The amount of tax that is brought in.
That is brought in.
So are we like a surprisingly small town?
We are a very surprisingly small town.
I see.
But it's because we have a large tax base. We are one of only 4 tax-based communities in Northwest Territories.
Okay.
So that obviously is very important. The other thing is, and I put this in my little campaign flyer, is we need to think post-Imperial. In a perfect world, we develop what's across the river.
Yeah.
And we become the next Fort McMurray. But that's a pipe dream, honestly.
Pun intended.
Pun intended, yes. Yes, that is a pipe dream. I mean, realistically, in today's climate, and I get it, you know, I'm very environmentally conscious myself, and oil development is not high priority. Though I don't want us to get so anti-oil in Canada that we forget that we still are going to need it and we're buying it from...
That's the risk, right?
Yeah.
Is that we end up relying on dictatorships or something like that for our oil. When we would have one of the cleaner oil industries in the world.
We sure would.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, even a lot cleaner than the bitumen that we're taking out of Alberta. I mean, we have beautiful clean oil across this river.
Yeah.
But we need to have something. I mean, I brought it up at the meeting, and I know I probably hurt a few feelings, but a road is going to be tied to industry.
Yeah.
We need the road. There is no doubt. But the bottom line is, if we are a collection of little hamlets up here in the Sawtooth, we're not a high priority to put in that kind of infrastructure dollars.
That's pretty serious infrastructure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, saving Imperial, big priority. But also making sure that we get ways to keep our supplies coming. So if it can't be a road and the barge isn't looking good, then we need to get the government to give us better winter road services.
Yeah.
I mean, when I first came here, MGM was drilling, Paramount was drilling, Conoco was drilling, Husky was drilling. Our winter road was up to full weight by 15th of January. And I sent my last trucks out of here when I was with Matco on April 4th.
And how much of that was related to a longer cold season?
It wasn't. It was partly due to a longer cold season, but it was also they were building roads then. So back then.
At the forum, you described the difference and how the road is built, and I never thought of that.
Yeah. Now we scrape the muskeg, and then that means as soon as it gets warm, it just goes to mud.
Yeah, and there must be a significant cost difference in terms of building the road versus scraping the muskeg.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the problem is back then we had oil companies that were
incentivized.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do have a lot of problems here. I mean, I would love to think that we could get through this, but obviously this heating fuel prices right now.
Well, that's untenable.
I mean, I don't make bad dollars.
Yeah.
But the thought of over $5,000 to fill my oil tank.
Yeah.
I mean, my average last year was around $600 to fill up. Twice a month.
Yeah.
Around, anywhere from $500 to $600.
Yeah, and if you even tell that to anyone down south at those prices, it seems outrageous.
Oh, they look at you like, what? So the thought of a $5,000 tank of fuel, yeah, that scares me.
Yeah.
I mean, that scares me a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, because I was burning roughly 600 liters a month. And now that's over $3,000 a month that I'll be looking at this winter.
Yeah.
But now what we do have to remember as well is that is only until the road starts.
Sure. Presumably we'll have a dip in prices as it stands, I don't believe it will go down to barge prices, but it'll probably level out somewhere around $3 or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's far better than...
Oh, it's far better than...
Yeah, I think I heard the rack rate right now at SRP is $5.16 or $5.18 a liter.
Yes.
For diesel.
Yes. Whew, okay.
On that terrible note.
No, it's all really relevant and important. What is your long-term vision for Norman Wells, and how do you plan to help make this a reality? And you're kind of touching on that right now.
Yeah,
but...
and that's what I'm saying is we need to look at industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we've had mining, or we've had companies up here doing geological surveys. There's a lot of potential, but unfortunately, there's so many roadblocks, and those roadblocks, that's the biggest problem.
Yeah.
I mean, you have poor infrastructure as far as getting equipment here.
Yeah.
I mean, how many projects in the Northwest Territories, especially or in the Sawtooth, had to be canceled because we didn't get a barge?
Yeah, like all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so many major projects. So we have to come up with some creative solutions, and I don't know what those are, but we have to come up with better ways to get industry here. I mean, I know when Husky was working across the river, when Conoco were working across the river, that was the biggest stumbling block. Is they'd have to make hay while the sun shined. They could get in for 2 months of the year on the roads. And so, again, the road is so important to attract industry.
Yeah.
So it's that double-edged sword. It really is. But the long term, I mean, we need to be looking at post-Imperial. And when Imperial closes, it's going to be a long, drawn-out process, because firstly, you have to have abandonment. So every well that's in the ground has to be abandoned. That means they all have to be concrete filled, cut off at the top. So every well has to be... So
they don't just spew or whatever.
No, exactly. So every well has to be properly abandoned. Then you have decommissioning.
Mm-hmm.
So everything has to be at the plant and everything all has to be decommissioned. Then reclamation starts. So it's going to be a multi-year project. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, probably a decade or so.
At least.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be, suddenly a boom of economy because we're doing reclamation.
No, it'll be something, but it's not a boom.
And the thing is, the minute that they are shut down, they go from, for all intents and purposes, being a working oil field, which pays great taxes,
yeah,
to being an industrial dump.
Yeah, which doesn't pay taxes.
Which doesn't pay much taxes.
Is there a little bit of taxes that come?
I would assume we'd still be collecting some until reclamation is complete, but it will not be the revenue we're getting now.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So really, I mean, we talk about, we do have fantastic companies that come up here, like Canoe North and other companies that do tourism.
Yeah.
And tourism is fantastic, but it's never going to give us
without the infrastructure, it can't. Now, obviously, there are places in the world that do have tourism as their economic base, but those places are much easier to access and have longer seasons for tourism as well.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
And I mean, we don't really take much advantage of our winter season for tourism.
Yes.
I mean, we have the hunters in the fall.
Yep.
We have the canoers and the outdoor adventures in the summer.
Yellowknife has kind of cornered the Aurora.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Big time.
Again, easier to get to.
And again, that
more hotel rooms. Not even enough.
I was going to say, I actually flew up here today with Jim from the Heritage.
Yeah.
And we were saying if he could pick up his hotel and move it to Yellowknife,
put
it back down, he'd be busy. He'd be full every night.
Yeah. Norman Wells is comprised of a diverse population. You have rotational workers, long-term residents, and then kind of 3 to 5 year residents who are transient. How do you intend to balance the needs of all these residents?
Well, and that's one, you have to get involvement and inclusion. What bothers me sometimes is you have groups that come in and they stay in their little cliques.
Yeah.
And we have lost a lot of that sense of community. When I first came here, you didn't, any occasion was a great occasion to have a dance at the Legion.
Mm-hmm.
We had a St. Patty's Day dance. We had a Valentine's dance. We had, there was always something going on. And we've lost that. That's just not happening.
Is that what did that align with COVID?
No, that was before COVID. That aligned with that a lot of the Imperial people leaving.
Okay.
And it didn't just take Imperial people out, it took a lot of people out of the town.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of
because the supporting industry.
Yeah, exactly.
So, even a lot of the contractors who are local, people had to leave. They just couldn't, there just wasn't work.
Yeah.
I mean, I work for a contractor for Imperial. We were down, instead of having a 2-person staff, we were down to a 1-person staff. So I was running that warehouse by myself. And it was funny because I had an Imperial supervisor who would come over to help me offload trucks and things like that. But yeah, I mean, that really was the start of the bad times.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, that wasn't followed far behind by COVID. And yeah, we've been in recovery mode since. So we need to get that community spirit back and, get people out and start doing things again.
Fairly certain most of the other candidates cited that same kind of thing. My experience here has been since 2021. So I have I didn't even know this place pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I already fell in love with it. Like it's still great, but I can't even imagine what it would have been like.
Well, I can remember my first year here, and it was hilarious because my wife and I were actually living in Kelly McCoy's trailer over on Cannell.
Mm-hmm.
And we were renting that. And we had just come back from the St. Patty's Day dance. And the two of us standing outside, looking like a couple of Pez dispensers with our heads up and our mouths open, watching the northern lights going across the airport. And I mean, that was probably one of those moments where it was just like, I'm where I need to be.
Yeah.
This is home. But the other thing is too, it's hard to raise a family here. Like I came up after my kids were grown.
Mm-hmm.
But raising a family here with the cost of living in that and the cost of food and, I don't want to disparage our medical system, but one of the things, so my wife has some medical issues and it was hurt by fractionation of care.
Mm-hmm.
She saw 19 doctors in 3 years because you don't have a family doctor.
Yeah.
And that's just another factor in making it hard for people to come up here. Because if you have any kind of medical needs, this isn't a great place to be.
Yes.
Sadly.
Yeah. We're lucky we don't have many medical needs at the moment, but I do have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old.
Yes. So yes, you understand that, you get nervous.
Yeah.
And especially, I'm 60.
Yeah.
When you get a little older, you're nervous. The fact that it takes 6 to 8 hours to get a medevac out of here.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, that's a huge issue for a lot of people and something on the forefront of their minds.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it really is. And I feel a little bit betrayed because when I was on council is when we approved the new health center and we agreed to put in the infrastructure, and we had the director of Sawtoo Health and Social Services sit in our council chamber and tell us that with the new health center was going to come a full-time doctor in Norman Wells, or in the Sawtoo, but a full-time doctor. And that never,
lo and behold,
checks in the mail too. Yeah.
So our next topic is governance and leadership. So define what leadership means to you in the context of municipal governance.
One of the biggest parts of leadership in a municipal government is obviously looking out for what is best for our town.
Mm-hmm.
And that means we have to really work with the territorial government. We really have to work with the federal government. And unfortunately, it was one of the weakest links when I came here and when I first sat on council. And what really bothers me is the Canadian government has made anywhere from 50 to $100 million a year from this oil field. And when we were shut down because of a pipeline leak years ago, back in, we had to bring in a propane air mixer, because that's when we were all still on gas.
Oh yeah.
In town. So we had to bring in a propane air mixer. It cost us $400,000. We declared a state of emergency because we were going to be without heat. And
the turbines were on gas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we went to declared a state of emergency. We went to get federal funding and territorial funding. And we were told, now you have reserves, use those. So we were basically, we were out $400,000 of our reserves, which sure would come in handy now.
Yeah.
But so really working with the other governments is important. Keeping the focus where we need to keep the focus. We heard at the council, and it wasn't part of the agenda. And that was just like providing for the youth and the kids. So yes, we need to keep those focuses. We need to keep our recreation strong.
Mm-hmm.
We need to keep our infrastructure strong here in town. We've had some great strides. Like the chip seal was a fantastic thing. Finally getting good roads so that we weren't putting more. What we were using was DL10.
Is that beet juice?
So now we're using the
environmental
stuff.
Yeah.
We were using DL10, which is liquefied asphalt. One of the first things on the SDS, if you look at it, keep away over 100 meters away from a body of water.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. And that's what we were putting on our road. So, I mean, we did it. We've done a lot of
kept the dust down, though.
Oh, kept the dust down. Great. But yeah, so I mean, there are things that, we need to keep that infrastructure here in town.
Mm-hmm.
But again, so much of what we can do in this town depends on tax revenue.
Yeah.
And as a homeowner, I don't want to pay more taxes.
Yeah.
I honestly, I can't afford to pay more taxes.
Yeah.
And so, we have a good town staff. Our public works seem to be doing a very good job for us.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to have that money to continue to have those type of services.
Without Imperial.
Without industry.
Without industry. Yeah, it doesn't have to be Imperial specific.
It doesn't have to be specifically Imperial, but we need industry here because that's what's going to keep paying the bills.
Yeah.
So yeah, from a leadership point of view, we need people that are going to look at what is absolutely in the best interests of Norman Wells and our partnership with the Land Corporation
mm-hmm.
and SSI, because we all have to work hand in hand. If we're going in opposite directions, nobody's going to win. And that's what scares me, is it's starting to feel like there's a tug of war instead of a team. And that's what I want to make it a team. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, another thing that a lot of the candidates have expressed in the interviews that I've had with them. So I'm hopeful that if you guys can get on the same page, at least in council, and then hopefully that can spread to the other governments.
Absolutely. And I think that's what we need.
How do you handle personal conflicts in a professional setting?
You have to be calm. I and that's one thing I can say I'm better at now than I was, when I was younger. I think to a certain degree, age seasons you a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So you're always going to have conflicts. As I said, Frank and I used to laugh because we were a lot of times on the opposite sides of issues, but we always got along. And that's the thing. If I don't have to agree with everybody.
Yeah.
But you still have to be civil.
Yeah.
Name calling, that just doesn't work. We're not Donald Trump, and we're not trying to call people out and use silly nicknames.
Well,
and things
especially
like
for the type of government that's here, right? It's a consensus government.
that. Exactly.
It's not partisan politics.
And that's exactly what we need. Is we need the consensus all the way around, whether it's in the council chamber, whether it's dealing with SSI or dealing with the land corporation. We need everybody to be on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the fact that, Danny and Frank are working together.
Yeah.
And that's the type of thing that I want to see, is hand in hand at all levels.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like you answered this more or less, but can you be impartial when you have to work with someone you dislike?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that just comes, again, a lot of that comes with experience. I would love to say I've worked with people. Everybody I worked with was my best friend, but it's not the case. Sometimes you have to maintain professional relationships.
Yep.
To get the job done.
Yeah. Yeah. And the greater good comes first.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially in this type of environment, because this is why everybody runs for council.
Mm-hmm.
Is you run for council because you're going to appeal to a certain percentage of the people.
Yeah.
And so if you're appealing to a certain group of people, the person beside you might be appealing to another group of people. So you're going to have some differing views or differing agendas.
Yeah.
But that's part and parcel of teamwork, is just taking all opinions and coming up with the best consensus.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And like you were saying before, you want differing opinions, because then you can lead to, just because I have an opinion doesn't mean my opinion is correct.
Oh, there were issues that I brought forward when I was on council that I was defeated 6-1. I wanted to put an ambulance in Norman Wells. I wanted to make it part of the fire department.
Yeah.
I thought we needed to have ambulance service.
Yeah.
And, but it just, and I understood where my fellow councilors were going. It was just economics, but we didn't have the infrastructure in place to have an ambulance bay.
Yeah.
So, but
it's not quite as simple as just buying an ambulance.
Oh no. But again, we had, and there were times other members were defeated the same way. I mean, we all have opinions. And then, another one of the cute ones was Snoopy's Play Park by the liquor store.
Mm-hmm.
There was a bunch of us that didn't want a playground beside a liquor store. So, you work back and forth, and, at that time we put in all those playgrounds, and I was proud of that. I was proud to be on that council.
Well, they're used well.
They are.
Yeah.
And, every time I see them and see the kids out behind the school playing on the playgrounds that we put in, I'm happy. It makes me happy. So you take your wins and you take your losses.
Yeah, fair enough. What do you bring to the table in terms of working as a part of a team during a crisis? And you have an idea of what the kinds of crisis that Norman Wells faces.
One, I have a level head. Mm-hmm. Two, I have a massive amount of logistics knowledge. I have been in the logistics industry basically most of my working career.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I did when I went out to Imperial is immediately save them hundreds of thousands of dollars, just simply because I had solutions for some of the problems they were having logistically. I want to bring some of that logistics abilities to the town.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty darn good at coming up with creative ways to get things here. One of the things that, like I said, as far as that goes, that's one of my strengths that I think I can help, is I can utilize my expertise. And I'm a reasonably good listener. My wife would differ, but but yeah, so that's where I see myself in the team part of it. Nice.
Our next topic is community engagement and representation. I got 2 questions here. How do you plan to involve residents in the decision-making process?
That's been a hard one ever since, because of course everyone's invited to come to an open council meeting.
Yeah.
But you're lucky if you see 2 or 3 people. Yeah. Sometimes you see nobody. we've tried having committees of council, and you end up not meeting quorum because you'll get people signing up and then they leave, or they lose interest.
You mean people signing up for the committees and then not showing up for the meetings?
Not showing up for meetings. So
and quorum is a majority. Yeah.
Correct. So you want to get people involved, and how to do that has been an age-old question here in town.
Yeah.
I'm not a Facebook guy. And so much of what we do in this town rotates around Facebook. I laughed because when I got the invitation for the forum, it was because someone mentioned it to me who saw it on Facebook. And actually there was a note on the bottom. If you know a candidate who does not have Facebook, please
tell them.
Exactly. So I found that kind of cute, but it is a good method of communication. Organizations like yours, companies like yours.
Yeah.
If we can get people watching or, at least getting involved. I had more comments from the YouTube video or the video from Council Forum than I did from Council Forum. I had people coming up to me in Town Square.
From the one that we put
one you guys put on. And coming up to me saying, "Oh, I saw the video. You did great, Bob. Thanks." Or yeah, it was really cool to be able to hear. So,
yeah, because sometimes people want to participate, but something interrupts them, like cooking dinner.
And you know what? A lot of people would rather look at it online, than actually go and sit through it.
Yeah,
and we had great participation. I was really pleased. I was nervous at first because it looked like
it's pretty empty in the first couple minutes.
And then all of a sudden it was just like a flood of bodies came in. I loved it.
Yeah.
But to hear that people are taking the time to go on and see that.
I think they had something like 250 views or something like that.
And in a town this size.
Yeah, that's like half of the people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So to me, that is wonderful. And what you're doing with these blogs, I think this is fantastic.
Yeah.
Because it gives people the opportunity that if they are interested, it's almost like they get a chance to sit down and have a one-on-one with us.
Yeah, that was my goal. I wanted to bridge the gap between Facebook comments and cabin radio. Right. Exactly.
And that's why when you offered the opportunity, I definitely wanted to be involved.
Oh, well, I appreciate you coming on. It makes a big difference. Given the unique governance structure in the Sawtooth, how do you view the relationship between the municipal governments and the Indigenous governments?
Right now, it's a bit strained. I do feel that. I think there is some strain. We need to correct that. And we need to be forthright.
Mm-hmm.
Too often, there's too much going on behind the scenes instead of everybody at the table.
Yeah.
I hate hearing about decisions after the fact. So, we obviously have to work together. We can't not work together. And we have to work with all of the communities in the Sawtooth. The only way we're going to accomplish anything in the Sawtooth is if we work as a team. You talk about the road. The only way we're going to get a road is if we're all on the same page. So I think it's utmost important that we work with all of the communities, the bands, the corporations to become one functioning body.
Yeah.
Especially going forward, especially with the challenges.
I was listening to a podcast recently and they were talking about how, times of prosperity and kind of having enough allows people to kind of be more fractionated because you don't have to focus on like the core issues and you can kind of nitpick more.
That's so true.
Yeah.
It really is, because when it's great, it's really great.
Yeah.
I was talking to some old timers here, and when Imperial was at their booming, money was flowing. At one point while I was here, just before that pipeline instability, Norman Wells was the wealthiest community in Canada.
Wow.
We had the highest mean income for all of Canada. And the joke here was, if you want a job, there's a job here. If you want two, you can have two.
Coming from again, probably not having enough residents to fill all the positions.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I myself, when I first got here, I got suckered into becoming liquor inspector. I was never so hated in the community
than being liquor inspector.
Oh my God. It was hilarious to be the liquor inspector here because, at the time there was 3 bars I had to go to. There was the Legion, the Little Bar, and the Big Bar. And yeah, it was quite a reality. I worked out on site with a gentleman who I said it was nice for him to wave to me with more than one finger for a change. But yeah, it really is. It's a wonderful community and we all need to be a team. And fractionation is not going to work right now.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to win.
Do you think that the fractionation that we're seeing locally is a subset is exasperated by the kind of fractionation and tribalism that we're seeing on a national scale or in North America or even globally?
I think it's a big part of it. It's so hard because the internet's been an absolute godsend.
Yeah, blessing and a curse for sure.
But it's also been a curse.
Yeah.
Because, and the way it is structured is if you have a political view, you're going to keep getting fed.
Yeah.
That type of view. So, I've fallen in the YouTube rabbit hole more than once.
Yeah.
Well, immediately the next time I log in, it's basically trying to show me everything that I looked at the day before.
Yeah.
And that happens with the politics as well. And we have a lot of, so in the absence of fact, rumor becomes
dominant.
And I saw that, like one of the Facebook comments that somebody showed me, and it just irked me beyond belief, was a comment made in this town saying, with everything going on, why is Imperial Oil doing a beautification project on the bridge? They're repairing the Upper Bosworth Bridge. So that's the one that leads out to go to the cemetery.
Mm-hmm.
So now people are diverted and they have to go through the lease, which they've set up the detour signs and made it. But they call it a beautification project. The bank is sloughing away. The bridge could collapse. It's far from a beautification project. It's absolutely required.
The frame of the comment was misguided to begin with. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So they didn't have the fact. So they made an assumption that we're doing beautification projects. And that's the problem. Like right now, everybody is on tenterhooks wondering what Imperial's decision is going to be, including those of us out on lease.
Yeah.
And we don't have answers. So the town doesn't have answers. And that is frustrating.
Yeah.
They made a statement. They were very clear. 2026, if we don't get this line in. And it's purely economical.
Yeah.
Because they need, for the cost of the line, they need that much running time to recover the costs and still be profitable.
Mm-hmm.
I get it.
It's math.
It is. It's just simple math.
Yeah.
But they are looking at other alternatives. At least they're still looking.
Yeah. Yeah, they could just throw up their hands.
And they could have made that initial decision immediately and said, you know what? 2026 is our date. So I'm not rushing a result right now. I'm not rushing an answer because a rushed answer is going to be a bad answer.
Mm.
I would rather they take every potential, look at how they can get us through.
Yeah. That makes sense. Couple questions about economic development. Should the town play an active role in supporting the business community?
I think we have to. I think we have to support the business community. Absolutely. But within the confines of what we have the ability to do as a town. We need business and we need business to flourish.
Yeah.
Again, if we can get some form of a major industry to come here, then we'll definitely be supporting as much local business as we can to support that industry. It's very hard when there's such a small market base. I've been in business, and when your market base is limited, there's only so much growth you can have. I mean, it's why Manitoulin is no longer in Norman Wells.
Yeah.
I mean, they started in Norman Wells. Matco started in Norman Wells. And, and then they sold to Manitoulin. And again, another one, Manitoulin, big company. And they only looked at dollars and cents and said, okay, we'll just close.
Yeah. It's not worth it.
And that's the problem, is big companies, they look at it from a purely, mathematical point of view. So helping to set up small business, like we do need some small business back in this town, but we need industry for that small business to support, and the people. And with industry comes population. We'll start filling houses again.
Yeah.
Instead of our housing prices, as a homeowner, I've watched my housing price go down. I don't like that. Nobody likes that.
No.
If Imperial closes in 2026, I'm probably going to be at $100,000 in the value of my home. That hurts.
Yeah.
And on the other side of that coin, people who want to come to this town can't find a place to rent.
Yeah.
It drives me crazy. And the rents are high.
Yeah.
And with these oil prices, I mean, what are landlords going to do? They have to put up the rent. They can't absorb it.
Yeah.
So,
or offload the utilities onto the
tenant,
which is even crazier.
Yeah. So,
how do you assess the current support that the town has for local business, and what changes would you propose, if any?
I think we have been doing a good job of promoting local business. Frank touched on this at the council forum, like potentially some tax breaks. I think that's one of the things that we can do as a town. I would love to see anything we can do to encourage more tourism-based businesses coming here.
Yeah.
I'd heard some great ideas during my time here of setting up a snowmobile excursion type of business. Because let's face it, we have some fantastic trails.
Yeah, pretty epic.
So, those type of businesses, I say we do anything we can to try to encourage more winter tourism, cross-country skiing, things like that. Anything we can do to promote green, economical businesses, I'm all for that. And that's the direction I'd like to see things going. But again, we need to have...
You need industry as the backbone.
Well, we need something to anchor it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What is your biggest strength as that you bring to the table, just personally?
Experience. Honestly, I lived out east. I came here for the same reason most people come, either to out west or to Norman Wells. I came here because economically out east was very difficult. 15% sales tax on everything you buy. And it was living paycheck to paycheck. I hated that.
Yeah.
I hate the fact that we're heading that way right now, where people will be, having to make decisions of bills. What am I paying? Heat.
Yeah.
So experience, again, I've got lots of that. I've been working since I was 18 years old. And so I want to utilize my experience. I want to utilize my calm head and my ability to negotiate with people, like my ability to deal with people. I think that's going to be very important in this coming council, is how we address all the issues in a calm, forthright manner.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to agree to disagree.
Yeah.
And not make a fight out of it.
What's your biggest shortcoming What's your biggest area for growth?
For me personally,
Yeah.
listening. Yeah, that's sometimes I tend to get an opinion in my head, and that's one that I'm going to work on, as hopefully as part of this council, is listening to all opinions.
Yeah.
Because, as you said right off the start, we are a varied community.
Yeah.
So if you're not willing to listen, you're never going to go forward.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Our last topic is current issues and just a kind of a wrap up. But I've asked all the other candidates this question. What is your opinion on the recent SSI decision, and how do you view it affecting Normal Wells?
Well, I don't know enough of the basis for their decision. But the decision is obviously could potentially kill the town.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. We needed Imperial to get through to 2030.
Yeah.
So that we could transition.
Yeah.
If we don't have that, it's going to be very, very difficult. So do I respect their decision? Absolutely, because it's their decision. Do I agree with it? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I spoke to a Fort Good Hope resident who now lives in Norman Wells. And he says he's had some heated debates with the fine folks in Fort Good Hope because natural seepage has been running into this river for millennium.
Yeah.
And he actually
to this day
took people in his boat and took them down the river and went, that oil didn't come from Imperial. That's coming out of the riverbank.
Mm-hmm.
So to try to blame every bit of oil in the river on Imperial oil, it doesn't
hold water.
It doesn't hold water.
Yeah.
So they may test water upriver and find oil. That oil's been there.
Isn't that part of the name? Like legally, or I can't say it properly. Isn't that where the oil is?
Where the oil is.
Yeah.
And it's been that way for, like I said, millennium.
Yeah.
So that's part of the problem is you can't hold the safety standards that Imperial go by are very, very high. And, somebody was up in Good Hope and they were told, oh, don't drink the water. It's contaminated.
Well, the water that they treat?
Yeah. So the release out at the site was produced water, which basically is very brackish water.
Uh-huh.
It was 55,000 liters. So if you do a little bit of math as to the flow rate of the river, the amount of water, that basically would be like an eyedropper into a 10-gallon jug. And on top of that, by the time they woke up in the morning, that had already passed them and it was on its way to Inuvik.
Mm.
So, you have to put perspective. So they heard there was this 55,000 liter release and they assumed that everything's contaminated. No, it was literally a drop in the bucket. And it with the flow rate of the river, it was long gone. So it really didn't affect anything. But again, in the lack of factual information, the rumor mill takes over.
Yeah, exactly. For sure. What do you believe will be the biggest challenges for Normal Wells over the next 6 months?
Well, the biggest one is going to be cost of living. I mean, how the average family is going to afford to put fuel, oil in their tank.
Yeah.
Keep their house heated. Afford groceries. I said this before. My hat is off to Buffalo Airways.
Yeah.
I actually made a phone call because the rumor mill was, oh no, it's being subsidized by the government. So I actually made a phone call to the manager and he actually laughed. He said, no, we don't get a penny.
Yeah.
So I said, well, then what prompted you to come up with this 60 cents a pound air barge rate? And he said, Bob, it was two things. Our 737 was brand new. We just started using it. He said, and I saw an opportunity for us to do two things: keep it busy and help.
Yeah. Well, it's such a testament to the ability for private industry to step up to the plate and help. And I don't know if it's just like the way people think in Canada or whatnot, but so often people just think that it's the government that's helping.
And that's what bugged me so much. And it's such a contrast to what Canadian North has done to us.
Well, yeah, but even just the current situation, it was such, like the air barge came around so quickly.
Oh,
and private industry can pivot like that, right?
Exactly.
And then even now where we're going, hey, we need help for the fueling. Like we can't. That's not a thing that we can do here. Absorb these costs, and it's like we're on the edge of our seats.
Oh, every one of us is on the edge of our seats.
Yeah.
I mean,
and it's not like they could just throw some money towards the businesses. Like that's not going to solve the problem.
No.
That's arguably barely the problem.
And that's, like I said, that right now, that's really our biggest challenge, is just to get through the next few months.
Yeah.
If we can get to February and start getting trucks in here,
that'll be a huge help.
It's going to help immensely. Now, you said, you're right. We're not going to see it come back down to barge rate.
Whatever.
But hey, $2 off.
Yeah.
$2.50 off. I'd be a happy guy.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with gas. I mean, gas for the vehicles.
Yeah. And no one's even talking about that because the heating fuel is so much
more prevalent.
Yeah. Not everyone has to buy gas. Everyone has to buy heating oil.
Oh, yeah. We have to keep our houses heated.
Yeah.
And it's not like we have the alternative to start plugging in electric heaters.
No, that's not going to cost anything cheaper.
No. I mean, that was one of the things that people said, when we were looking at greener ways, when we had to switch from gas
to diesel.
Yeah. Everybody was looking for greener ways to do it.
Yeah.
Daryl McGregor, who used to run GTS here in town, he wanted to put turbines in the river. He said we could produce enough electricity, but there's only one place you could do it, and that's at the ramparts. And
wouldn't the ice be a huge problem for all that?
Well, that's why I'd have to do it at the ramparts, because it's
because it stays
flow.
Open. Interesting.
Yeah, there's enough fast flow.
There, power plant right there
that they could produce there. But we were looking for every option, because at diesel rates, you can't plug in an electric heater and expect to save 1 penny over.
No, it's like buying an electric car and thinking that, but if your electricity is generated by diesel, it's basically a diesel car.
For most of us, our biggest power bills come in the summer when we're running our AC units. Yeah. Not in the winter. So, but yeah, like we really do have to do something to help our residents get through this next few months, the cost of living. I mean, that's really our biggest crisis. And again, if Imperial decides to shut down in 2026, that's going to take some amazing hard work and leadership to transition this town.
Yeah.
And, I don't want to be the one who has to say to half the town staff, I'm sorry, but, we're not going to be able to keep you on because we don't have the tax base to keep people employed.
Yeah.
And, and then how do we deal with all of the infrastructure issues and things like that? So we have a lot of challenges in front of us, but obviously the biggest one is cost of living.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Are you optimistic for the future of Norman Wells?
I want to be optimistic. Yes, I really do. I want to be optimistic. I want to try to keep, if we go into it with our head hung low, we're already doomed.
Yeah.
So we have to try to be optimistic and work with all the partners involved to give this town a future, because right now it looks pretty bleak.
Yeah.
So, I want to continue to live here. I want to be able to afford to continue to live here.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And for me right now, if everything closes down, I don't have a job here.
Yeah.
And that's rough.
Yeah, and a house.
And I have a house here.
Yeah.
And I want it to be actually worth something.
Yeah.
Because I love it here. I love my house. I love
this
town.
No one wants to see the town go away. And
no.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right, Josh. If we all have vested interests in this town, and this town is one of those places that, it's funny. Those that love it a lot.
Yeah.
And you have some people that come in that last 6 months and they're gone.
Yeah. Or even a couple of days.
Or even a couple of days, yeah. So,
are you optimistic for the future of the world / humanity?
oh, that's such a hard question.
Just a, small answer.
Small answer. I am optimistic. But again, I know this is idealistic, but we as a world need to start thinking a little more globally and a whole lot less tribally.
Yeah.
And that's the problem right now, is we are so tribal.
Yeah.
I see it in our local politics. I see it in the U.S. politics immensely. And I see it all over. You look at a lot of the elections around the world right now, and it's becoming very fractionated. So I'd like to be optimistic. I have grandkids.
Yeah.
I want them to have grandkids.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Is there anything you want to say directly to the residents? And if so, please use this time to do so. You can look directly into that camera if you like.
I would like to. My biggest thing, folks, to everyone out there, get out and vote. Your vote is your right to complain. Honestly. So I want everyone to get out. I want them to vote. I want them to put the candidates in that they feel are going to do the best job for them here in Norman Wells.
Fantastic. Bob, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Maybe we could do an episode that is not so structured some other time.
I would love that.
Yeah, wicked. All right. Cheers.
Cheers.